Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart. I know the roads sometimes feel lonely, but remember you're not the one and only. There's always someone there to help you, a helping hand to pull you through. There's only one thing you should do: take my hand and join the Love and Laugh crew. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then they love and life guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And I apologize, I had my mic on mute, but you're getting used to that, aren't you? Alright, now tonight I've got a very, very interesting person to talk to. His name is Simone Zanetti. And Michelle says we can't wait to hear you. I hope you can hear me now, Michelle. Now we'll start off with. Are you hearing sound now, guys? I hope so, because it should be coming through. It's showing us it's going through. You hear me? Thanks, Marlene. I was getting worried. Okay. let's get going. Let's get back to the subject at hand. Leonardo, I think the sound should be there. But anyway, I'm going to continue. If you can all confirm that you're hearing sound. Okay. All right. Now, as an entrepreneur, Simone Zanetti has opened multiple businesses in the US, Europe, and Africa. He invented some cutting-edge products which won the Innovation of the Year accolade. He's passionate about tactics, tools, and strategies on how to grow a business to profitability, with particular attention to sales and digital marketing. He publishes what he has learned in his YouTube channel, The Digital Rainmaker. In this period, he has shared some interesting and unique insights about coronavirus and lockdown. He's an international public speaker, and he's worked with some of the largest enterprises in the world. Right, let's get Simone on, shall we? Here we go. I know you're watching, Simone, so the call is coming right now. Hi, Simone.
Hi, Scott.
I don't see your picture yet.
Okay, let me see if it's like earlier. Let me press the button quickly. As many times as you try, there's always some glitch.
Yeah, it worked fine earlier, didn't it?
Yeah, I didn't change anything on purpose. Okay, let me just move the camera.
Oh, there we go. I think it's going to work.
Tell me now. Can you see me?
I can see your little Zanetti icon, but I can't see you yet.
How about now?
No.
Can you see me now, Scott?
No, I still see your little icon. While you're just working that out, tell us a bit about your life growing up as a child, and because you've had a very interesting life, haven't you? Just while you're fiddling with the camera, just talk to us about that.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a very normal life until 15, 16. Then I got the opportunity to live a couple of summers in the US and in Spain to study English and Spanish. Although my English is not still good, but I keep the accent for marketing purposes. Apparently it works.
Is that your story?
Yeah, that's my story. I stick to it. And then I had the opportunity to live in South America in the mid '90s, which has been very interesting because I found a lot of similarities with South Africa, which happened later on in life. And then when I came back, I worked in the US and in Northern Europe, and I got an opportunity in South Africa with a mining company for an opportunity. And I didn't think nothing would happen. I said, okay, let's just have an holiday. I've never been in South Africa. I hear it is a beautiful country. And then instead I won the deal. And so we had to do it. And then while I was here, there was a bigger tender with Eskom, and then I won that one as well. And then another one with Discovery Health. I think you can see me now. Can you see me now?
I can see you now. Yes, that's much better.
Okay, great. Okay.
I like the lighting.
Okay.
All those bright colors.
Oh, thanks to you. Yeah. And yeah, so then winning deal after deal was impossible to deal with the deals from Italy. So I spoke to my business partners. I decided to stay in South Africa and bring the company to profitability. And since 2003, I'm still here. Apparently, I like it.
Right. Now, you were in Italy at the beginning of the pandemic in February, weren't you?
Yeah, that's correct. I was right before the big bang of the pandemic. I was actually in Milan when they were start talking about the pandemic coming. But there was nobody with masks. It was very casual. I went to restaurants. I went on a train. I went on a subway. I had business meetings. Everything was business as usual. And then I just got out of Italy to South Africa right on time, because then they locked down the country right after that.
Wow.
And that's when I started investigating the whole thing. I understood how big it was, and I tried to start predicting the curve of what was going to happen in South Africa, because I was in contact with my family and friends in Italy, and I saw that South Africa was exactly at the same point that Italy was, where nobody was wearing masks, nobody was caring, and so I tried to get some awareness. So I went in self-lockdown, and then eventually, after a couple of weeks, I got self-tested, which was an adventure in itself. In South Africa, because right after the president did the first announcement, where he asked the people that were traveling from abroad, especially hot countries like Italy, to be tested, that's exactly when I went and got tested, and the experience was absolutely shocking. I mean, I guess that every country at the beginning, they are unprepared. I mean, I went to one hospital, and which was listed among the hospitals that were doing COVID-19 tests, and nobody was wearing masks. Maybe one person was wearing masks. I even took a few pictures.
Right.
But they were accepting people outside of the hospital. Then they gave me a list with other hospitals. I went to another one in Johannesburg, and they told me no, that is too risky. They decided not to do the test. So I went to another one, and that was even more ludicrous, because at the casualties, the doctor had the receptionist with a stack of prescriptions photocopied without my name, without anybody's name, and basically for, I think it was 450 rand, they were handing over prescriptions without even seeing the patients, just to go to the lab to do the test, which is of course unethical. But anyway,
so you had to pay 150 rand to get one of those prescriptions.
No, 450.
But you had to pay money for them to actually give you a prescription.
For the photocopy.
A photocopy of it.
Yeah.
Wow, that is.
Yeah, and the prescription said that I was, at risk, and I had to take the test, and blah 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 blah.
Which hospital was that?
So I even, one of the hospitals in Bedfordview. I can't remember the names.
Was it a public hospital?
I mean, as I said, no, it was a private hospital.
A private hospital. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, private hospital. Yeah.
Jeez.
And and then even when I went and took the test, the nurses did. The nurse that actually do the swab, she had a mask, but everybody else didn't have a mask. All the people that handed my credit card and everything else, they didn't have gloves. So if I was infected, luckily I was not, because I was negative, I would have infected for sure them, because they handed my credit card, and they would have infected everybody else. So yeah, it was very, very unprepared. But I'm glad to say that 2 days ago I went out for the first time in a long time, and I would say that 90% of people had masks, which is very good.
Yeah,
which is very good.
Now, just talking about hospitals, I've been talking to a bunch of doctors in South Africa. And we know that there's a huge shortage of doctors in South Africa, and that they've brought in over 200 Cuban doctors to kind of cover up that shortage. And the ANC have basically, straddle themselves with the problem, because there's such a huge brain drain because of the NHI that's coming up. And the real thing that concerns me, and I'm right in the middle of this, with there are 300 doctors in South Africa now who've qualified as doctors overseas, who cannot practice as doctors in South Africa because of red tape.
What do you mean
Well, the HPCSA does not recognize them. That's the Health Professions Society of South Africa. And it's because of red tape and incompetency, and it's the same old. What I'm hearing from so many people is you've got these ministers in South Africa who are, there they are, they're getting big salaries and they're talking big and doing all these wonderful things, but if someone sends them a letter or an email, even to their department, it never gets replied to, it never gets answered, it gets ignored. There's a complete breakdown in communication, and this is happening across the board in South Africa. It's like corruption. It's happening across the board. Have you come across that when you do business with government?
I tend not to do business with government, except the one that I did with ISKCON, that is parastatal. But that is across the board. It's not just in South Africa. I've been doing business, as I said, in many countries, and I prefer not to deal with the public sector. That's just my choice. You might say that is to avoid this kind of complications. Also because I don't do bribery as a principle. I'm a very ethical person in everything that I do. So I don't want to get involved in anything that might lead to. I'm not saying that everybody is corrupted, but I don't want to take the chance. So I tend not to. It's not say that the companies that I'm involved with they don't do business with the government, but it's not my thing. But one thing that struck me about South Africa, and maybe I'm misinformed, but I read about that couple that was arrested in Cape Town because they got married during lockdown.
Yeah.
And in the same exact period, there was a minister that basically had a party at home, and
A lunch party, yeah.
she published there the pictures in social media, etc. And she got basically 3-month leave, of which some months were paid and the other were not. So I don't understand if there are citizens of level B and level A, because I mean, why there's different rules apply to different people? I mean, if both broke the rule, they should be both arrested, or in both cases they should pay leave to the couple that has been arrested. And so I don't know, it's these weird things that I really don't understand, and they go very public, and nobody seems to be shocked. And I'm like, but this doesn't make any sense. So I don't know.
Well, I'm just going to show. I'm just going to show an image on the screen. You'll see it on your computer there. I got this email from a person today, and he works in the garden industry, so he's a gardener, and it's a fine issued to one of his friends who's also a gardener, issued by the police, and it's a written notice to appear in court, and it's a 10,000 rand fine. You know, this guy hasn't got a lot of money to put together. He's been fined 10,000 rand because he was cutting grass as a garden service. This happened yesterday. 10,000 rand. Wow. He's been fined. And it is that craziness we're talking about, because you mentioned about that minister. I've lost your icon again.
Oh, is it back?
No, yeah, now you're back. Yeah.
Okay.
So, 10,000 rand fine because he was cutting somebody's grass. And how is that affecting a social distance or whatever? You know, it is just ludicrous how these fines are being handed out.
You know, Scott, I'm sure that a lot of the audience have been traveling as well. I think that there are different levels on public order, and I don't necessarily think that whoever is in power gets to this level of details. I heard, for example, a couple of weeks ago that a person has been killed by the soldiers in Alexandra. True or not, that is. It's very difficult to have control above these details. But when is a president making a decision publicly, then it's a different story. And look, I don't get into the whole politics of the South African complex environment, but some of the choices that the government, I'm not saying the ANC, I'm saying the government took during the pandemic, I think they were courageous at the beginning, and they were in the right direction. But the kind of tight seal that they are keeping at the moment, maybe it's because the kind of environment that we have in South Africa doesn't allow for more flexibility. But if they don't loosen up a little bit, they're going to have much bigger problems than COVID-19 with the economy.
Absolutely.
And people started looting and
anarchy.
So it's a very delicate. Yeah.
You've raised a very interesting point, and I want to ask you a straight question. With this lockdown, what sort of level lockdown should South Africa have established from the very start that wouldn't have hurt the economy? Because I think what they're doing is destroying what's left of the South African economy.
Look, Scott, I've studied many other countries, and what countries have to do. I published in my channel 3 levels of the deterioration of the country.
Yeah, I saw that.
The first one is the health one. Yeah. So when a pandemic starts, the first hit, especially something like COVID-19 that spreads very quickly and very fast, is that the health system get overthrown. It's got overwhelmed. Sorry. And so what countries do, especially countries that arrived with the third and fourth wave, like South Africa, they try to see and they speak with other countries to see what was the thing that they would have done differently. And they say, we should have protected the health environment because that's the first thing that collapses. So I think the choice that South Africa did to do a lockdown, a tight lockdown at the beginning, was in line with other countries to try and protect, basically slow down the curve to have the time to equip themselves. Now, you told me that they asked to have some doctors from Cuba, and I've been in Cuba. They have really excellent doctors in that country, and they had the time to get more equipment. They had the time to also change their procedure, because remember, I did an interview with a friend of mine, which is a professional nurse in Italy, and they said even in Italy they had to change all their ICU. Every single bed of ICU is now dedicated to COVID-19. So all the people that they were using the ICU before, so all the strokes, all the people that had accident, all people that come out from surgery that usually use the ICU, now they don't have an ICU. So they need to equip the hospitals and extend actually and do the field hospital and all that. So I think the move to do a quick lockdown at the beginning, I think it's a wise one. The problem is that then while you equip that, you need to start releasing that iron fist, because otherwise you start having other problem, which is phase 2, the economical problem, and then phase 3, the social problem, when people start dying of hunger and eventually they go in riots.
Right. Now, I'll tell you my view on the lockdown. I think that what South Africa tried to do was to try and use a first world solution in a third world country, and the two don't work. Because if you look at the townships in South Africa, the living conditions are such that you've got 4 or 5 families living in a shack. There's no chance you can have social distance. And someone's got to go out and get the shopping. So it's a different environment to, let's say, Italy or Australia or the US. I mean, the whole idea of having a lockdown is social distancing. If you can't incorporate that from the start, then you might as well not even have one. And that's why I believe that South Africa should have just had a huge peak, as Gates called it, let the herd get the infection and get the immunity, and then just let the economy carry on. That way the economy would have continued, because the peak, you can see what's happening to the infection rate in South Africa now. It's just going through the roof, and that's during a lockdown. Here in Australia, we've only had 3 infections in Queensland in the last week. We've had 5 days where there have been 0 infections, and lots of people are getting tested. So it's working in Australia because there is a social distance, because of the way people live. As I say, South Africa is a totally different kettle of fish. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's South Africa is a machine with 2 speeds and 2 worlds. So I agree with you that only a first world solution wouldn't have worked, but we have a first world environment in South Africa as well, and they coexist, unfortunately or fortunately. So the thing is with the townships, as you said, these people live under tin roof houses that they reach 50 degrees Celsius during the day. So physically, even their lifestyle, they wake up in the morning, and I know it because I know people from the townships, and they write to me. They wake up in the morning and they go out. Their life is outside. The house is only a place where they put their stuff and they sleep at night and they bath. Yeah. In Alexandria, there is 1 tap of water that serves 500 people. Wow. 500 people that they have to queue to get drinkable water. So how do you keep social distance with that? Under the sun, without shade. So yeah, I agree with you. There is a challenge. I'm sure that they have, you know how governments work. They pay a lot of consultants, but this is so new that it's very difficult to get the right solution. I spoke with people in Brazil from the favelas, which is like the townships, and they have the exact same problem. What I would be interesting to know if is the data that we see in India is correct, because India's got some similarities, and they don't seem to have a peak in the infections. But here we go into another subject that is very dear to me, which is data. I don't think that worldwide we have accurate data anywhere. And that is a big problem because we keep on making assumption on data that is not correct.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying is like countries like China, for example, who've been questioned about the accuracy of their figures when it comes to COVID-19, are just talking crap.
Yeah, well, I always say what I know. Okay, so when I will have the information and the proof that something is wrong, I will say it, and I always say it. But imagine that now China is the kid that broke the jam jar or the jam jars on the shelf.
Right.
And now it's up to that child, the China child, to say how many jars did you break. Do you think that he's going to say the right number?
Well, that's a good question. But do you think South Africa's giving out?
Logic.
Do you think South Africa's giving out the correct figures?
South Africa is just not testing enough. It's as simple as that. So, in my opinion, the data of South Africa is mathematically wrong because when you have a lockdown. In every other country, if you check the other countries, after lockdown, you see that the curve keeps on going up for 2 weeks because it takes 2 weeks for the virus to spread and then see the symptoms and then being tested.
Right.
So if you see the other countries, they go up for 2 weeks and then they start dropping because you see the good results of the lockdown. In South Africa, the day of the lockdown, the figures started going down. It's mathematically impossible, in my opinion. Maybe I don't have all the figures. I even put it out there. Nobody could explain it. How is it possible that you start the lockdown and the data go down? Like if the virus says, oh, I'm on holiday now and I'm not going to infect anybody else. It doesn't work like that. So I don't know if that was a propaganda or they wanted to prove a point or they wanted to show or they needed to demonstrate that the lockdown works because then the president afterwards, he basically pointed out that, look, these are the numbers and they are working, etc. But it's not how it works. You just do the math. That's not how it works.
Well, I can tell you what it's all about. It's like Jacob Zuma when he was trying to say how many ANC members were. Remember that? 1,700,000.
Okay, but he couldn't count. That's
1,000.
Shooting on the Red Cross.
He just didn't have a clue, and that's the trouble. This ANC government are clueless at whatever they put their hand to, and that's why the figures with COVID-19 are completely botched as well. Now,
Scott, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is going to be? Well, before we look at that, tell us about the anomaly of the curve of the infected people when it comes to South Africa.
Yeah, that is what I said earlier, and this anomaly of the curve. So basically, after lockdown, going down and flat, and even decreasing like that. It's not normal. It just that's not how the virus spread and behaves, even in lockdown, and you can see it also in the other countries. And then when Professor Karim, the day after I published that study of mine, actually, and of course he didn't see my video. Just a coincidence that mine was the day before.
Right.
He basically explained and he admitted that there is an anomaly on the curve, that no other country in the planet has got the same curve as South Africa. And then he started explaining that there are three waves. The first one is the foreigner coming into the country. The second one is the people in contact with foreigners or people traveling and getting infected. And then he said there is a third wave where basically the larger population getting contact with people in the second wave. And he said either the third wave, as he called it, it didn't happen, okay? And I want to make a point on this. The virus doesn't spread in waves. I mean, we as humans, we like to put everything in mathematical schemes, and I understand that. But just imagine, let me tell you this story. So I came back from South Africa, from Italy. Let's say that I was infected. I was not, but let's say that I was infected. So I go to the coffee shop at OR Tambo and I get a coffee, okay? Then I just sneezed on my hand and I pick up that mug. Then the person serving the coffee picks up that mug, okay, and gets infected, then touches her eyes, etc. She gets infected. She goes back wherever she comes from. She infects the whole family. The whole family goes into taxis, public transport, wherever they go, and they infect everybody else. This is how the virus works. It doesn't work in waves as it has been described. So this is the first thing that is unrealistic. The second one is it says that the only other way to justify it is like unless South Africa has got a mojo and it's invulnerable, or it didn't say the word invulnerable, but it said South Africa has got a mojo. So how can a professor, and I have the utmost respect for people that have got this kind of knowledge and experience, but I cannot see a credible feedback from a person that described as mojo in a scientific presentation in front of a country. These are the things that completely I'm flabbergasted when I hear these things in South Africa. And as much as I love this country because I live here, and nobody forces me to live here, I choose to live here. I could live in any of the other countries where I've got other activities. So these things are a little bit. It's not something that somebody says in a live interview. This has been prepared, and the word mojo was in the PowerPoint presentation. So yeah, this anomaly of the curve has not been explained because, in my opinion, is not based on real data. And I'm not saying that they do it on purpose. It's just not the way that it works.
Right. Okay. Now,
yeah.
There's one thing that's quite clear, is that when the coronavirus first started, I was covering this back in January on my channel, and the mainstream media was saying, these alternative social media groups are putting panic in people's heads, and they're making people panic, and there's nothing to worry about, and everything's going to be great. And all of a sudden, when the reality hit them, when things really went pear-shaped in South Africa, they were the ones putting panic in people's heads. It is quite extraordinary how the mainstream media operate.
Yeah, I listen a lot to Dr. Buttar, Dr. Shiva, Dr. Kaufman, and there's a lot of theories that if you listen to them, it can make sense. At the same time, I speak also to doctors and people that see people dying. And I think there is something in between here. I don't know if there was a conspiracy at the back, if there are some plans, but I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day, this virus was man-made and it just got out of hand and they're trying to cover up. I don't know if there was a more sinister plan behind it because I don't have the proof to do it. But unfortunately on this, only time will tell.
Yeah, well, I had a very interesting discussion with Teresa last night. And I don't agree with everything she says, but she's certainly got a very strong argument that these coronavirus, especially the vaccines, are clearly man-made. And the really disturbing part of what she was able to show from copies of original documents is that the vaccines and the viruses, not just the vaccines, but the coronavirus itself, has been weaponized by countries like China. And there were patents which she showed where it says in the patent heading, the military arm of the Chinese army is actually holding the patent to develop a coronavirus. This is in black and white in patents.
Okay, I checked some of these patents, and there are some American owners of patents of the coronavirus. But remember, some of the justifications on the study, it was that they were trying to find a cure for something else. And of course, they need to have a justification for something. But what surprises me is because, I love science and facts. And if all this is true, why nobody comes out with a clear cut to say this is the way it is? I'll give you an example, and I don't have anything against Dr. Buttar, but somebody that is so vocal about conspiracy theory that the virus doesn't exist and is not at the extent that it is, that people are just trying to instigate fear to control the masses and all of that. Okay, and he's a medical doctor. Then he does videos on YouTube where basically asks people all around the world at 11 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock in the evening, wherever they are,
right,
to put their energy and their positive thinking to avoid something catastrophic that was happening to the planet. And then afterwards, it does another video to say, yes, we did it. I can't tell you what was that bad thing that was going to happen, but we are still here. It didn't happen, so it worked. So this is like magic. It's like magician. It's like if I tell you to your audience now, everybody cross your fingers because a meteorite is about to hit this planet. Now we wait 5 seconds. Guys, please, cross your fingers. Everybody did it? Okay, we're still here. and the meteorite didn't hit the planet, so I am magical. So you understand, when somebody comes out with these kind of things, how can that person then have credibility? In my books, I cannot follow anything that this person says. It's just not credible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, look, one of the other issues that Teresa raised last night, which I totally agree with and I totally support, because I'm not into conspiracy theories. I like to see facts, okay? And it's quite clear. Have you heard of ID 2020?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it's quite clear that you've got the Rockefeller Foundation, you've got Accent, you've got the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are involved in this ID 2020, which is the chipping of humanity.
Yeah.
And, you know, the reason I'm bringing this up is because here in Australia, the government has said that lockdown can't really end until everybody has had a vaccine. Now, it might be a very, very light lockdown. It might be just, you know, keep a social distance or something like that, but just get on with your lives. I mean, that's where it's heading in Australia right now. But the point is that these governments have been indoctrinated with the thought that people need to be vaccinated. And the Bill and Melinda Gates vaccination, it won't be a chip as such, but what it will do is leave some kind of bio mark on your skin, which will confirm whether you've had the vaccine done or not, just by running it under infrared or something like that. And people who haven't had it done, what they're suggesting is that there might be limitations on travel or other things.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
I heard that. Yeah, so I would consider this theory, besides the fact that I researched the price of vaccine, and there is no money to be made on vaccine. Vaccines are very cheap, and the margin of vaccine are very low. What is that sells a lot and makes a lot of money to the big pharma is the cure, especially a cure that where you need a recurrent injection or pills, whatever it be, like the antiretroviral for HIV and things like that. Those are multi-trillion business. A vaccine is a once-off thing that is very cheap because it's a liquid that you inject, and there isn't much money to be made on a vaccine. So I'm struggling to understand if maybe there is another plan behind it, but it cannot be making the vaccine because there's much more money to be made on a cure than a vaccine. You know what I mean?
Which is the exact reason I believe there's another agenda for people like Gates to be involved in this, because he's involved in ID 2020 in a big way, and that's clearly to get every human being onto a computer database which will be run by Microsoft, and that's clearly where they're going.
I still don't see the bigger picture. So what is the reason for this? Maybe
you mean the microchipping?
Yeah, so, I mean, and it's control, it's power. I understand, but I mean, I said it before. I mean, I'm not pro-gate, and I don't particularly care. But I mean, if you would be, and also I wanted to link this with Ramaphosa as well. If you would link, if you imagine yourself being one of the richest person in the world, do you really want more money for what? I think that you want to be remembered for something, or I mean, I'm not rich, so I can't really tell. But you know what I mean. What is the motive? You need a motive. You need a reason for that. And this brings me to your argument earlier with Zuma and Ramaphosa. I think, you know, when a businessman goes in power, is always a double-edged sword, because Zuma had what was a fifth grade, or I don't know what it was, and you know, we all know how that went. But Ramaphosa is a person of business, and everybody can do all the criticism how he got there and all of that. But a person that runs a multi-billion business, he knows how to run an organization, and running a country has got similarities. And it's the same thing with other politicians around the world. The risk is that, of course, they can use the power to facilitate their business. And I'm not saying, that anybody is doing it, but of course that is a temptation. But again, things need to be based on fact, because if you take, for example, do you remember what is the first industry that has been unlocked in South Africa, even before the release of the lockdown? It was mining. Do you remember that? So Ramaphosa is involved in mining. And Rupert, which gave $1 billion rand to the South African government, he also got diamond mines. He went out of mining in 2011, then he got back into diamond mining. And Nicky Oppenheimer is in mining as well, and he also gave $1 billion. So it would be easy now to say, oh, the first industry that has been released and able to work was mining, because two of the people that gave more money to Ramaphosa and Ramaphosa are in mining. But at the same time, I got mining mines as clients, and I spoke to them. And it's actually true that if you leave a mine unattended, it becomes very dangerous, and you might kill people when you go back in to try to maintain it, because the gases that are produced and everything gets loose and things like that. So, it would be very easy now to do a theory to say, oh, this is the reason why mining has been the first one to be released. But there are also real reasons. So you never know where the reality is, because they work at a level that we don't have visibility on.
Yeah, well, I'd like to address your comment about Ramaphosa being a businessman.
Sure.
Before 1994, he was a terrorist in the bush. And the reason he became
so was Mandela.
Yeah, but Mandela was behind bars. But the reason Ramaphosa became a billionaire was because of BBEE, because you had all these big companies in South Africa that needed to find an influential black person to become a shareholder so that they complied with the BBEE regulations, which are racist, which state that 51% of that company must be owned by black people. And that's how Ramaphosa became billionaire. He's not a smart man. I mean, he talks well, but he's not a businessman. He's basically made a huge amount of money through the policies that the ANC have brought into South Africa, which have enriched what I call the black privileged blacks. In other words, the ANC politicians, their families, their friends, and I know there are some black billionaires who've actually made it themselves. I accept that, but Ramaphosa is not one of them. He basically has been a beneficiary of this policy. So when it comes to running the country, he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. What is interesting is that there's a professor in Cape Town, Ruth Hall, and the organization she works for is called PLAS. And PLAS is involved in actually providing the policy directly to the ANC government, which is then read out in Parliament without a word change. So the actual policy has been written by an NGO called PLAS, which is funded by George Soros from the Open Society Foundation. That's how law is written in South Africa. You've got a complete disconnect between the ANC government that people vote for and those people who are actually writing the policy that they bring into law.
Yeah, look, my discussion is not on Ramaphosa specifically. What I'm saying is that a person that has to manage companies, it doesn't matter how they got that companies, because it's not my place to discuss it. But internationally, they are a little bit more clued on how to run an organization than Zuma was. That was my point. And on BEE is under everybody's eyes, or at least internationally, on how it works. That there is, of course, a class of new privileged people that they are taking advantage of these laws at the expense of the larger black population, of the previously disadvantaged population, and of everybody else that are non-black, of course. But like all things, I like to see them rationally, and I think if we complain about BE, as I've always done, but because I think that all the money that they invest in this program should be invested in education. So the moment that everybody of every color is going to have the same opportunity to study and be hired for their values and what they can do, then we wouldn't even have this kind of discussion. But unfortunately, it's going to take generations for this to happen. And the white population in South Africa is a minority. So from a political perspective, we need a change where a new generation of colorless people will understand that it's better if we move on from BEE and we start having a meritocratic drive where people are really rewarded for what they are worth, regardless of this race thing, which is stinking.
Well, all I can say about BEE is if they continue with that after the lockdown, South Africa will financially collapse. I mean, there's no question about that, because what you're doing is you're locking out some very capable people who should be in management positions, and that is going to destroy the country, what's left of it after lockdown. I have no question about that.
You gave me the opportunity actually to raise another very important point that people are not realizing.
Go ahead.
That in this situation, thank you, Scott, in this situation where countries are going down economically, there are countries that are taking chances to stay strong, and the moment that the storm will go down, some countries, as you're mentioning, they're going to be so low and in debt, that it's going to be very easy for countries that will stay strong in this period because they test more, or because they're more strict, like you said, Australia, or because of the enormous kind of testing that is doing, like Germany. And it's going to be very easy to take over companies and resources of countries that they didn't do the right moves. So besides South Africa, every other country, whoever comes out victorious from COVID-19 is going to be an economical victory. It's not going to be an health victory.
Right. Just for the record, we've got about 350 people watching the live stream right now. I'm just going to address those people. Please feel free to ask questions in the side chat, and if I can ask the moderators to please copy them, and later on if they can paste them when we're ready, and I'll present those questions directly to Simone. Now, okay, let's continue here. Hot food, alcohol, and cigarettes. What the heck is going on? Why are they banned under this lockdown?
So I think it's part of it's part of the two-speed countries that South Africa has, as you mentioned earlier, because I couldn't find other first world countries, at least, where there was this ban. But apparently in South Africa, alcohol will make it more difficult to control the masses, and apparently there's the population of poor people that they buy cigarettes singularly and then they share them, and therefore is easier to get infected. So of course in a country it's very difficult to make a law for different kind of people, although South Africa seems to have a patent on this in the past. So I think that is the reason. And unfortunately, who doesn't do this and doesn't abuse this has to suffer the same consequences. I think it's as simple as that.
Okay, we'll come back to cigarettes in a moment. What about hot food?
Yeah, so that hasn't been enforced really. So I also talk about in one of my videos, because during the lockdown where restaurants could not do delivery, which I found it ridiculous, places like food lover markets and stuff like that, they were selling pizzas and lasagnas and hot food. So again, it's not the same law for everybody, and this is something that is really wrong. So I think that they had so much to do at the government, and I don't want to justify, but I think there is really a lot of work that needs to be done, and they struggle to put everything in place like it's supposed to be. Is going to come. I think now delivery is starting, hot food is starting, because if you do contactless and with the right protection, I don't know why you can't unlock at least that part of the economy and every part of the economy that safely you can run. Right.
Now, I want to get back to cigarettes. And I'll give you a conspiracy theory that has legs, okay?
All right.
Dlamini Zuma, that powerhouse woman who's trying to become leader and take over from Ramaphosa, who is an ex-wife of Jacob Zuma. She overturned Ramaphosa's suggestion that cigarettes would be allowed from the 1st of May. Now, her son, Edward Zuma, is involved. He's actually in the background of a company that produces illegal or illicit cigarettes and distributes them. And the only cigarettes that are being sold right now throughout South Africa are these illicit cigarettes. In fact, just 2 days ago, and I saw the article in the oh, it's online, and thanks to my many subscribers who send me a whole lot of really interesting stuff. What it turned out was that the police came across this warehouse somewhere in Johannesburg that had millions of these illicit cigarettes that come from the company that Edward Zuma is a major shareholder in, or they don't have shareholding because it's illicit. They don't pay taxes. So the conspiracy is that Mrs. Dlamini Zuma, part of the family, knows about this, so she's banning legal cigarettes so that her son-in-law can actually make a huge amount of money by selling cigarettes illegally at twice the price and pay no tax. And that is the theory going around right now about this situation. Any comments on that?
If that is true, that is outrageous. But again, not that somebody has gotten a legal activity and they advertise it on the Sunday Times. So, there's probably all these kind of things going around. If that is true, is outrageous.
Yeah, well, that is what has been said. Now, the other thing that's we need to talk about is, okay, this lockdown, there are a lot of people who are starving. And it's getting worse because in the townships and in the white squatter camps, which is my particular area of interest, we try and work with our own, if I can put it that way. Because when it comes to feed parcels, the white population is being omitted from the handout by the ANC government cadres. It's only going into the black townships where the Africans can line up and get food parcels, which has sometimes been tampered with, and they only get half what they should because, of course, the people are handing them out are pocketing food parcels as well. So the whole thing is a complete disaster. The way it's going right now is that there is a growing number of people in South Africa, in particular in townships, who are starving. They're getting desperate.
Yeah.
And they've got families, they've got kids, and they get to a point where they've got no other option but to go out and steal. And
correct.
I saw, I'll have to find the document, but I saw, that's right, it's a newspaper article in Pretoria, where this ANC heavyweight was basically saying to a group of blacks, I think he actually said it on the radio or on a WhatsApp. He said something like, look, the whites stole from us. It's okay now to go and steal from whites by breaking into their homes. He actually said that, and it's in this newspaper article.
That's nonsense.
So this is where it's becoming anarchistic. And when you look at the complete the disgusting state of the South African police service, it really is becoming a huge concern. What are your thoughts about the situation going forward as people are starving? Well,
so what's going to happen is that if the lockdown is not gradually released and people are starving and they are not fed, they're going to have a window where they're going to start attacking first food stores and then other people's houses to get food,
right?
To the point that they can feed themselves. If they cannot achieve this because maybe the army will prevent it or whatnot, they're going to have a certain window of time and then they're going to die of starvation. So when one of my backgrounds as a student was psychology, and when a human being historically he gets put with the back of the walls and it becomes a matter of survival. We have a very powerful organ in our brain called the amygdala, and the amygdala it takes over the whole brain, and the only thing that matters is survival. And a human being can do things that even didn't think it was possible. Even a super polite lawyer would pick up a gun and threaten somebody to get food, because when you're desperate and your family is at risk, you will do anything to save yourself and your family.
Right. I'm actually going to put on the screen, you'll be able to see it too, the actual newspaper article that I was referring to. And I might just read it because it gives you an idea of what's happening out there. Okay, now the article is headed, let me just make sure, yes, it's on there, good. For all my viewers, there it is. It's is not a crime in South Africa. I'm not sure what the first line is, but it says by the leader of a Pretoria-based youth organization has issued a controversial statement by telling youths to go and steal from white people in the suburbs. Faraday Mkoani, the leader of the Uhuru Cultural Club, told 100 youngsters who attended the Human Rights Day celebration at Lebanon Township Park to go and steal from the whites because it is the right thing to do. Stop stealing from the black people because they will deal with you in an African way. They will bewitch you and you will go crazy. The whites have stolen us from the 6th of April 1652. That's the article I was referring to.
Yeah, as I said, when it comes to survival, is every man for himself. So I really hope that we're not going to get to that situation, because that was my fear from day one when I came back from Italy. That is the worst that can happen. Then we're going to see really ugly things. Also because to try and stop it, of course, the only way that the government can do something is use the army, and then it's going to be very ugly. So I hope we're not going to get to that situation, and things I see that they are changing every day. I'm a positive person. I hope that it's going to get better. If it's not, it's going to equalize itself, because, as I said, we are to hardcore human nature now.
Well, I was speaking to Ian Cameron about a week ago now. He's from AfriForum. He's in charge of safety and security. And he said that logistically, the army in South Africa can only actually deploy about 3,000 people. That's it. That's a full army, 3,000 people. It's tiny.
Yeah,
they've got 73,000, but most of those people are sick. They've got AIDS. They're not. They can only deploy a tiny percentage of the soldiers that they've got. That's how incompetent it has become.
Yeah, I researched the number of soldiers available, and I found that different numbers. Apparently 70,000 is including all the staff, but not necessarily soldiers that is in the defense force. So again, I don't know if they're gonna hire mercenaries, but from where? Because every country at this point in time, they need their forces. So I'm also concerned about that number. But also depends on how they are used, how they are deployed. The worst that can happen is that they're going to declare martial law. Then it's going to be really bad.
Well, I think the worst that can happen is that the ANC government can collapse, because I think that's more likely than, well, I guess martial law first, but I think the ANC government will collapse because the army is too small to really handle an outbreak in South Africa. The police service is completely incompetent. I mean, there's some really good police, but you can see they've got no discipline. And I've got a question here from Corey that I just saw in the side chat, and he says, please ask Simone if he believes the government will continue with the dictatorial post or the dictatorship post lockdown.
So, like all governments during COVID-19, this government will determine their future based on the choices that they are making now. So when they're choosing now, whatever they do, of course there is a component of trying to save lives and the economy and all of that. But at the end of the day, they need to save the ANC. Like any other political party in power at the moment, because they're going to be under the spotlight. I think the only time where there was a time like this was the Second World War, and then the politician had a very different role. So I think that the choice that we'll make, they're going to be to try and make sure that the next time that we go, where you go and vote, because I don't vote in South Africa, but when South Africa go and vote, they don't lose too many votes. So their decision is going to be based on that. So if having a more strong arm is going to bring more vote in their mind, they will do it. If they think that they're going to lose, then they're going to lose. If they go full blown and they want to take over and become a really dictatorship, then it's a different thing altogether. But I think that what they will realize, that South Africa is the amazing country that it is, besides the people and the natural resources, is because of its economy, and has always been a very fertile ground for investment. If they lose that, it's going to be a big problem for everybody. First of all, South Africans, including the government. And we don't want to end up like another Zimbabwe. So I think what is important to do is to think how to rebuild the economy. So they need to do all the promises that they have done of the billions that they have to give to companies and all of that. I speak to some of my colleagues, etc. That needs to happen. They need to release. So the plan should be to start going back to work in a safe manner. So take turn, take shifts, start reactivating, take as less risk as possible. The health system is there. So some people will get sick as long as you stay under the curve and it's manageable. It's not that now nobody must get sick. People get sick every winter. So somebody will get sick. It's just part of nature. But you can't kill a whole country because some people will die in any event. And I know that it's hard to say, but you need to be practical. And I don't want to go to the extent of Boris Johnson that took it to another level, but there is some good in the approach to say you can't go only one way. You need to reactivate the economy.
Well, I have to tell you, I think that you're wrong. I don't think this ANC government could build a Lego block. I think they just got absolutely no clue what they're doing. I'll tell you what's happening from where I see it from the outside, is that the Rand has just been put to junk by Moody's. It is now junk. Investors overseas, by law, have to take their money out of South Africa. That's part of the process. International investors. Huge amounts of money, billions of rands have left the country. On top of that, you've got expropriation without compensation. Who is going to invest in a country where 5 years down the track the government can come along and say, we're expropriating your property or your business? No one is going to invest in a country like that. What the ANC government are doing is they're putting a huge shackle around their ankles. That they have no clue what they're doing to the economy of South Africa. And I don't think they care. I think that people like Ramaphosa and Ace Magashula, David Mabuza, they're all so damn corrupt. They're all got their heads so deep in the trough. They're making so much money on the side through their corrupt practices. I don't think they give a damn about what's happening to the country. They're just taking while they can.
But that's why I put a big if in front, and I said if they realize that what they're doing, that is not even benefiting them. So picture this: if this is going to happen, and then South Africa is going to go down as you are describing, which is one of the possibilities. So once people will be hungry of all kind and color, etc., who's going to vote for the ANC again?
Well, unfortunately, the blacks will, and I'll tell you why. With the food parcels, let me tell you what's happening. With the food parcels that they're delivering to the black townships, all the people delivering the food parcels have ANC T-shirts on. They're not non-political. Clearly, it's the ANC. It's not the government. It's not the taxpayer who's distributing the food parcels. In the minds of those starving blacks, it's the ANC government. That's what they're doing.
That is wrong, because they should represent the government, not a political party.
Exactly, but that is what they're doing on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I guess time will tell. Maybe I'll come and see you in Australia.
Now, I've got another question here from Grace, and she says, Simone, will they trap us with mandatory vaccine without a notice? And before we know it, we can't buy, sell, or travel.
I heard this from several sources internationally. I hope that is not going to happen, because that will also bring to a revolution. Because I mean, that is proposed to us. I hope it's not going to happen. Anything is possible, but yeah. I mean, as you know, in South Africa, in many countries, some vaccination are mandatory, but are very well-known diseases that we know a lot about. So this is a funny thing. So there's a doctor called Dr. Andrew Kaufman that he said that the way that the virus has been classified at the beginning was extracting samples from the lung, where they didn't even separate the virus, which is much tinier even of a bacteria, so it could have been separated. And so the way that it has been classified is of a such broad spectrum of DNA that it's not very precise to a specific virus. And then they said the closest that we could find of this virus that now we found in the lungs is the first coronavirus or SARS-CoV-1. And then said 80% of the DNA, it's similar, so let's call it SARS-CoV-2. So according to Dr. Kaufman, he said that this is hilarious because as human beings and chimpanzees, we have 98% common DNA, but we don't call ourselves chimpanzees or chimpanzees humans. So how can you associate a virus with another one so lightly when it's got only 8% DNA of a sample that to start with has not been classified properly? And so what comes after this, which is the worst part, if this is true, is that all the diagnosis of COVID-19, which is the disease, has been done on a such loose premise that everything becomes COVID-19. And he said, he's from the US, and he said that in the US, he has colleagues, doctors, that they said, if somebody dies and you think that they had COVID-19 because they were coughing, don't even test them, just say that it's COVID-19, just to increase the number of COVID-19 cases that are out there. And this seems to be a person with some qualifications, but again, you go with this one, and then somebody that say that the exact opposite. And what I'm saying is, and even worse, Dr. Montagnier, who is one of the co-discoverers of the HIV virus, he said that in his lab, his team has identified 2 strains of DNA attached artificially to the coronavirus.
HIV.
And this can be. Yes, HIV, yes. And this can be done only in a lab and is only man-made. But then, and he said that anybody else with a lab, or with his skills, can do the same test. But this hasn't been done, and then they discredit him. So as you see, what is completely incredible in this story is that why there is somebody that says, this is the lab test, anybody can do it, show it to everybody. Everything is a total chaos, and it seems to me that it is a fabricated chaos, because why nobody's coming out with actual fact and data?
Well, in Australia, Scott Morrison has demanded an investigation into how the Chinese handle this, and of course that's caused a huge raucous between China and Australia, because China don't want anyone to know what actually happened. And America's come in behind Australia as well, but China's threatening to give sanctions against Australia, and China is our biggest trading partner. Now, just this question that was raised about vaccines. One of the things that hasn't been talked about here is, just like the influenza virus, these viruses, they mutate. They change their form. Yep. So a vaccine is no longer working for that particular mutated virus. So this whole question about, you've got to have a vaccine before you can travel is BS, quite honestly. As I said, it's just like the flu. And the other point here is that if you look at the actual, and getting to your point about people putting deaths to COVID-19 when they aren't, I had an email yesterday from a lady who said, my grandfather died and he had a heart attack. And when they got the death certificate, on there was written COVID-19, cause of death. And he had a heart attack. He had no symptoms of COVID-19 at all. And as you said, this is how they're manipulating the figures. But getting to the mutation of the virus, if you look at the influenza virus and the number of deaths it causes every year around the world, it's a lot more than this coronavirus has caused. And yes,
no, it's not, Scott. It's not.
Well, according to the figures I see.
Let me tell you. So if you take the number, if you take 100 people that are sick of COVID-19 and 100 people sick with influenza, you are right. Okay. So, in fact, the last episode I published on my video with the nurse from Italy, she explained it very well in the studies. So, the mortality rate, if you take the same number of cases, is correct. But the problem with the coronavirus is that it's very quick and it spreads very easily. So, the number of people infected are many more, and that's why the total number of people that die is higher, and it shows in the stat that is higher. So, in cases by cases, you're right, but because there's many more infected, there's more death. That's how it works.
Well, we've never had that proven because we've had a lockdown. You look at the flu. The flu is highly infectious. I mean, I remember when I was at boarding school, and the whole school, 400 boys, all had the flu at the same time. Now, if that's not infectious, then I don't know what is.
It is, but the infection from influenza, it takes 4 days to develop the symptoms. Coronavirus can take up to 14 days, and in that 14 days, you infect other people.
Exactly,
so it spread at a, so if the normal influenza spread at a 1.5, 1.8 rate, coronavirus spread at a 2.53 rate. So much quicker, and also for a long period of time where you don't defend yourself or others. That's why they say that the best way to behave outside with coronavirus is to wear a mask, not because you don't want to get anything, but because if you have something, you need to protect the others, because you need to be altruistic to be able to defend yourself and your family. So it's kind of a loop.
Yeah, but I get back to the point that probably about 98 to 99% of people who get the COVID-19 don't die. And the very small number of people who do die normally have complicating factors like they're very old, or they've got heart conditions, or they've got lung problems. So they're basically in a critical position anyway. So why have a lockdown? This is my question. Why have a lockdown for a virus which is, in my point of view, not dissimilar from the flu that comes around every year, and it does kill, I think it's about 160, I think it's about 160 million people, not 160,000 people a year or something like that. It's a huge number of people who die from flu every year.
So this is another difference between the flu and coronavirus that might answer your question, is that with the flu, you don't need hospitalization. With the coronavirus, the hospitalization that you need, it goes from a mild respirator just through the nose to a very intensive care, which normally is used for other things. And that's why the health system tends to collapse without a lockdown, because it just can't cope with the amount of people that need oxygen. It's as simple as that. So the development of the disease is different.
I accept what you're saying about the ICU requirement, but I can tell you now that a lot of people who get the flu do go to hospital, because here in Australia, when we have flu going through the community, the hospitals are full of people with flu, and they're very, very sick, and some of them, a lot of them die. So it's not dissimilar.
But you never had.
It's not dissimilar to COVID. Sorry?
Yeah, but you never had in New York hospital bed in Times Square in Central Park.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. New York is an extraordinary situation. I accept that the COVID-19 might have a deadlier impact on those, as I said, who've got existing conditions that are just right for the COVID virus to strike. But we've both agreed that a lot of these deaths which are attributed to COVID-19 aren't actually from COVID-19. They're actually other causes, but they just put them down as COVID-19. The interesting fact is that in Italy, and I read this somewhere, in Italy, I don't think there were any deaths from flu this winter. Whereas, there were so many deaths from COVID-19, because every death from that kind of virus was just put down as COVID-19. Nobody really knows how many of those deaths were because of flu and how many were because of COVID-19.
And back to my point, it all depends on the data. Unfortunately, we don't have real data, so it's just speculation. We don't know if somebody that was dead of COVID-19 had also another condition, and how much one was taking over the other, and was the real reason for dying.
I guess my point is that I think this lockdown situation that the world is in is a complete farce. That's my point of view, because it is not something as deadly as the Black Plague or Ebola or something like that. Yes, it's highly infectious, but the actual effective death rate is tiny, and as I say, it impacts people who are normally in a bad position anyway. I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree on that particular point. Are there any
few points?
Well, it's good to have different viewpoints. Are there any other?
Sure, absolutely.
Are there any other questions that people would like to put to Simone? Please go ahead. We've been live now for about 75 minutes. So if we don't get any questions shortly, we might.
Went quick.
Sorry. It
went quick.
Yeah. Oh, look, these live streams always go quick. never. They're never dull. Believe me.
Is any question from people listening?
Yeah, it takes a bit of a while for them to come through. So
there's a bit of delay. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a question here for you. Jonathan King asks, "What about the farm murders? What do you have to say about that?"
About the farmers?
Farm murders. You know, the black gangs who come in and murder farmers.
I used to live in a farm north of Pretoria, and I had to leave because I've been attacked. So, it's something. It's really sad. That is something that it should. The government should take action against that. I know that the farmers, they take justice in their own hands. It happens also when my attack was there, and I've been helped by other people around my farm. But yeah. I think we are going off topic.
Right. Okay. Now, Ben Hashem asks, can Simone say why South Africa's COVID numbers has not risen as much as other countries? It's currently only 6,330.
Yeah, so that is my point on the anomaly of the curve. So there are two aspects. One is the South African population is younger, so of course we don't have all that level of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that they had in Italy and all of that.
So most of them are asymptomatic.
Yeah, and people are getting better because, as you say, there is only a small percentage of people that they need care, and even a smaller one that dies. So that can be one. Another factor can be that the environment here is different because it's hotter now. You saw that there's been a shift in the last 10 days of infection from Johannesburg to Cape Town, and in Cape Town it's colder. So is that a coincidence? Because we were in lockdown, so there hasn't been more traveling. So I'm assuming that probably the temperature makes a big difference with the virus. So the virus ideal temperature is between something like 7 degrees and 15 degrees, something like that. I don't remember the exact one when is ideal. So the colder is going to be, the more acceleration probably we are going to see. But look, Scott, and everybody, there is other factors that we don't know, all of them, that accelerated the virus. I give you an example. The reason they found out, one of the big reasons why in north of Italy there's been such a pandemic is because they basically do a massive intensive production of pigs, okay, for pork meat use. And in January they released earlier, the government gave the permission to release the waters of all the pee and poo of the animals to fertilize the fields, creating these clouds that then they release ammonia and they create a kind of pollution called D10. And D10 is a perfect carrier for COVID-19, so much so that COVID-19 can travel 30 times more than just with the normal droplets. And that's where the epidemic started there. And basically, it gave an highway for the virus to travel much more than in any other countries. And this is the only one that we know. Imagine how many others we don't know that delay the virus or accelerate the virus. Maybe South Africa has a condition with temperature and all of that works in our favor.
Right. Don't you think that
or maybe the data is not real?
Don't you think that the taxi service that's used in South Africa, these little African taxis, is a perfect petri dish for the coronavirus?
Like any other high-density place, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now we've got a few more
but
questions.
That's not a secret. That's science.
Yeah, there are a few more questions that have come in. John Jefferson asks, what are your views on diversity?
In which context?
Well, I guess diversity just between races of people.
Well, my wife is non-white. She's Indian, so I'm very pro-diversity. I think that diversity enriches. That's why I always travel the world and all of that. So yeah, I am pro-diversity.
Right. Okay. Well, look, I have Indian and African guests on my live stream as well. So, we love to get differing points of view from different people.
Sure.
Now, Pete Pompeyce has asked, please ask Simone his best advice to get economy going, best strategy for South Africa, i.e. deregulation of labor laws, etc., etc.
Yeah, so as I said, I don't know how the government will do it, but we need to get to a much lower level of lockdown very quickly, where the rules of safety are enforced strictly. So there must be 50% of people at work, everybody with masks and gloves, and you mentioned public transport. That must be really, if they want to use a taxi, it must be 3 people in a taxi. Then it becomes anti-economical, then so be it, but it helps to boost the economy. All the billions that they received from I don't know where, they should use it to just restart the economy. So deregulating the or allowing the lockdown to be released gradually with enforced more stricter safety regulation is the only way that we're going to go back in our feet with some, of course, financial help.
Right. Okay, now Oliver Mackay has asked, by the way, we've got about 400 people watching at the moment. Oliver Mackay has asked, why has South Africa had no M curve?
Yeah, I would like to know that as well. I would like to know why the M curve appears 2 weeks after the lockdown in certain countries. And I asked around, somebody tried to give me a reason with weekends and stuff like that, but it doesn't happen the same day. So everybody listening, if somebody has an idea why there is an M-shaped curve 2 weeks after lockdown, except South Africa, please tell me.
Yes.
Because nobody knows.
So basically, their figures are BS. Okay,
but think about this. I mean, Italy, Germany, France. They're all first world country, but they all have the same M-shaped curve 2 weeks after lockdown, taken by different countries with different health system in different time of the month. So it's really weird.
Yeah. Okay. Rhino Fundamerva asked Simone about adrenochrome and if the cabal are using it. I don't know what adrenochrome is, but maybe you do.
I haven't. It's in my bucket list. I haven't researched it yet, so I can't comment on that.
Okay, sorry, Rhino. Neither of us know what adrenochrome is. Okay, Hannes Krobler has asked, what is your take on 5G and all the hype?
So I interviewed a doctor that did a South African doctor that I have a lot of respect for him. He did. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I think it switched to my big headphones. I couldn't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he did the research, and his finding is that at the moment there isn't any proven study that 5G can cause any kind of damage and less and less help COVID-19. Dr. Buttar says that it doesn't help COVID-19, but it suppresses the absorption of oxygens in the lungs. What is for sure is that electromagnetic fields, they have an effect on human beings because, of course, we produce electricity as our bio mechanism. But everything that I've researched is just speculation. So it might be true, it could, but there is no proof for now.
Right. Okay. Now, Warren has said adrenochrome was a white rabbit the entire time, not to mention something about the city of Wuhan. So I'm still a bit confused about what that's all about. But anyway,
no, it is a research. I've seen it, but I haven't dug deep into it.
Okay. Hannes Krobler's asked, we've done that 5G and all the hype, haven't we? Now, Ron Stern asks, how do the Italians feel in Italy after the devastation of COVID-19? How do your family feel about that? So
they also complaining about the government because apparently the government took some very bad decisions. I guess it's a common thread. A lot of people lost a lot of relatives, so it's very bad. So my family specifically, for the moment, they are fine. In fact, my My brother just came out from a case of cancer, and is just after 1 year and a half of operation, etc., has been diagnosed, and now is fine. And he said, I hope that I didn't beat cancer and now I die for COVID-19. That's been ridiculous. So, yeah. So my family for now is fine. But yeah, I mean, you saw the numbers. The situation there is not ideal. But people are also dying from going out. And I think it's today or tomorrow that they're going to release the tight lockdown. So we're going to see in 2 weeks if that works.
Right. Okay, now 7775 Dawn asks, does someone think it's fair that the government is taking away our right to smoke and drink?
So in principle, no. In effect, when a government thinks that a specific behavior can jeopardize the well-being of the greater country, then they can do that. And it's the same thing as should the country ask the citizen how much they would pay in taxes, they would go broke immediately. So the government has to take decisions that are not liked by the citizens. Then if it's right or not is not my place to say. I'm just saying how it works.
Right. Now, okay, I'm just pulling down some more questions here. Hannes Krobler asks, delay in the test kits, is the M curve the reason? Is that the reason for the M curve?
What does he say that it is?
A delay in the test kits, in other words, not doing the tests that they should be doing.
No, but why an M shape? An M shape, that means that goes up, then it goes down for 1 day, then it goes up, and then it goes down. No, it can't be on the delay. In the delay, you would have a regular curve. You wouldn't have an M.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, we're getting technical here.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just cutting and pasting a question here that's cut in half. Thanks, V. Okay. Now, what does it say? It says, okay. Brink DJ asks, comparing the average death rate for previous years with the current situation as they're now doing in Europe to determine the possible actual death rate associated with COVID-19. Now, statistically, what do you say about that?
Yeah, so they are doing all sort of mathematical models, including this one. But the problem is always the source of the data, because the data of people dying from influenza from previous year is pretty accurate, or it's standard, and anyway is constant with the years before. If you instead see the number of that from COVID-19, as you said, if they've been associated with another cause, how can you tell if a person died of a stroke and wouldn't have died with COVID-19, or it was COVID-19 to cause the stroke? So it's speculation. Unfortunately, we don't have the data to take a rational estimate, and it's very frustrating.
Right. Okay. Now, another pretty interesting question. Okay, Leon's asked, does it make sense to have a 3-hour window for exercise? Before you answer that, I just want to say that in some countries they're doing a similar thing, but they're giving different groups within the community different times that they can actually go outside and exercise. I think it's is it the UK, or it's a country like the UK where, everybody can go out between 6 and 9, like in South Africa, and then they go back in, and then the elderly go out between 9 and 11, and then the kids go out for a few hours in the afternoon. That's how they're handling that. What's your take on that, Simone?
Yeah, I agree with you that having shifts would have been better. But again, in a country that is difficult to manage like South Africa, imagine having people having different shifts for different ages, and then having somebody to go and check on them. I mean, I've heard today from a friend a story that he has been stopped by a public law enforcement, and they didn't have a mask on. One of them, at least, they didn't have a mask on. When I was driving the other day, I saw policemen without the mask on.
Right.
So, it becomes who's going to police who, and are they going to do more damage than good? And I'm sure that probably is an exception and not the rule, but it's all good to think in an ideal world. We have so many ideas. Then if that is practical for a government to implement it, especially in a country like South Africa, it's a different story.
Right. Okay. Faye Simone Fahey says, are still have the pin location map, which are up to date. Do you, yes, I've seen that little pin location map where all the infections are happening and so on. Do you still have that on your website?
Yeah, I still have it. If you go on, I'll write it here on the chat. Is the digital rainmaker.com. See if I spelled it right. The digitalrainmaker.com. I put it in the chat. It's in there.
Right.
You will see there is on the home page. I'll send you to the point where you can see the map. So there is a map from. This is another funny thing. There's a map from CSIR, so the Center of Research, which is great that they publish the map without a legend. So you don't know what the dots represent, which I'm assuming that red means dangerous and green means not dangerous.
Right.
But then again, you need to say, any scientific person would tell you, if you publish data, you need to say what is the source of the data. So how did you get that data? And what is that pinpoint in my area means? That means that you find people there, or you have an algorithm that evaluates that there is danger there, or there's more infected people. They don't tell you. And this lack of transparency in the government, honestly, it's frustrating.
It's very frustrating. Now, guys, I'm going to be wrapping up the live stream shortly. We've been going for about an hour and a half, and I think we've covered a lot of very interesting information, and it's been great to have Simone's input into what he feels about different things. As I mentioned earlier...
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Sorry?
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And don't forget that Simone does have a YouTube channel. I've got a link to it down below the videos, so you can go and have a look at that as well. Are there any further questions before we wrap up? What I'm going to do is I'm going to just direct now to Simone and say, Simone, is there a message you'd like to give out to those who are watching the video now or who might watch it later, related about the topic that we're talking about here?
If I may, being a non-South African that has been living in South Africa for 17 years, and I think that the majority of your viewers are from South Africa, I think that you guys have an amazing country, and if we all work in the right direction, sooner or later, all the things that we complain about, they're going to come out right, but don't give up. Okay,
fantastic. All right, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. We've had a good crowd, which is always nice to see. I want to in particular thank the moderators for the fantastic work that they do. You guys are stars. You really are the reason we can have a side chat, because you keep things under control there. And finally, in conclusion, once again, I'd like to thank our guest, Simone, for your time, and please be safe, everybody, and take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.